Hello friends, I would like to present before you a case of multiple sclerosis. In our day-to-day practice, we do not come across these types of cases because the prevalence rate of this type of disease is very low in India. It is estimated that it is 1.33 per 1 lakh population in India, whereas in the rest of the world it is on the higher side. So it is one of the rare cases that comes for the treatment to an Ayurvedic physician or Ayurvedic hospitals. Hence, I would like to share a success story of a case of multiple sclerosis that received treatment in the M.A. Podar Hospital in the year 2003 when I was doing my post-graduation in the same hospital. But before going to the case, let us understand what exactly multiple sclerosis is. Now, to understand multiple sclerosis, firstly, we should understand what is myelin and what is its role in the central nervous system. See, basically, myelin is the insulating and protective fatty protein that forms a layer on the nerve cells and that insulates the nerve cells. Like we have wiring, electrical wiring at our homes and all the places and other places. And on the electrical wires, the wires are made up of metals, but they are covered with rubber or coating of other material that acts as an insulator. So even though we touch the wire, when the current is flowing through the wires, we do not get electrical current. Similar type of function of myelin is there in the as far as the central nervous system is concerned to insulate the nerve cells and to allow the easy passage of the synapses. It is wrapped around the axons, and this myelin sheath is produced by the special glial cells called as oligodendrocytes, which are present near to the nerve cells. This myelin enhances and actively assists the neurotransmission that I have said. In multiple sclerosis, what happens is this myelin sheath, the myelin covering is destroyed along with the oligodendrocytes, and occasionally there is also destruction of the axons. In demyelination, what happens is due to the destruction of this myelin sheath, the speed at which an impulse travels through the nerves becomes 10 times slower than the normal. This is what happens when there is demyelination or there is destruction of the myelin sheath. Now, what happens is that in multiple sclerosis, the demyelination is the major underlying factor which is responsible for multiple sclerosis. We have seen that demyelination is the destructive removal of this myelin sheath. Because of that, there is primary breakdown of normally formed myelin with relative perivascular infiltration of the inflammatory cells and often perinervous occurrence of lesions in the white matter. Because of this destruction, there is infiltration. The inflammatory cells, they come and they take shelter in the perivascular area, and there is occurrence of lesions in the white matter. Now, what are the clinical features? It is featured by recurrent or chronically progressive neurological dysfunction, especially caused by the lesions in the central nervous system. As far as the etiology is concerned, exact cause of this particular condition is not yet known, but it is believed to be an autoimmune disease. If the immune system attacks the myelin sheath, then there will be destruction of the myelin sheath and there will be formation of lesions which are typical for multiple sclerosis. But it is believed that autoimmunity is not the single cause, and there are several other factors which might be associated along with the autoimmunity. Then the second factor that has been discovered is the viral infection. There is no specific virus that has been identified that can cause multiple sclerosis, but a common virus, such as a virus for measles or herpes, if it lies in the dormant stage in the body for a longer period of time, may act as a triggering factor to uh, to generate the multiple sclerosis or to complete its pathology. This is about the etiology. If we go across the prevalence, the mean age of onset is 29 to 33 years of age, and women are more likely to develop multiple sclerosis than men. So if 3 women get multiple sclerosis, 2 men will get multiple. So the ratio considered is 3:2. If we consider the distribution in which parts of the world this is the most prevalently seen, then in Northern America, in European countries, in Russia, the prevalence rate is very, very high. And in other parts of the world, in India, their prevalence rate or the risk association is very, very less. And that could be the reason why that we get less patients of this particular type of condition. Now, what are the types of multiple sclerosis? First is the relapsing and remitting MS, that is multiple sclerosis. There is unpredictable relapse, and there is partial or total remission after each episode of relapse. The disease, whenever there is a relapse or whenever there is occurrence of symptoms, the disease may be inactive for many months or many years, and it counts for around 25% of the total cases of the multiple sclerosis. Then there is another type of presentation which is called as benign multiple sclerosis. In this condition, there is minimal disability that lasts for 10 to 15 years after the onset. It does not worsen with time, and there is no permanent disability. So there are chances that the patient will recover from this particular condition, and it approximately the frequency of this particular type of multiple sclerosis is 20%. Then another clinical presentation is secondary progressive multiple sclerosis, in which there is progressive disability after the onset, and it is often superimposed with the relapses as well. So the chances of complete remission are less in this particular type of condition, and approximately 40% of the cases of multiple sclerosis are of this type. Then there is primary progressive multiple sclerosis. So there are no typical attacks seen, but there is slow onset and steadily worsening of the particular patient, and the lesions keep on worsening over the period of time, slowly but steadily. And approximately 15% cases of multiple sclerosis come under this category. Now let us see how the pathogenesis happens. This is a normal functioning nerve where we can see an axon, the myelin sheath intact, and oligodendrocytes. Now, whenever there is attack from immune system or INF alpha or interleukins or tissue necrotizing factor, these oligodendrocytes are destroyed. And if we come across, if we have the picture of it, this nervous, the myelin sheath on the nerve is destroyed, so that the axons are open, and the nerve impulse will not travel effectively from such type of nerve fiber. And this is what happens in a case of multiple sclerosis. See, this is the graphical representation downloaded, available on the internet. On the upper side of this slide, you can see a nerve impulse traveling through a normal normal nerve fiber, and you can see it is traveling in a full intensity along with only one path. But in second picture, whenever there is demyelination, you will see that there is a loss of nerve impulse, and only a small part of the impulse is able to travel distal to the demyelinated part of that nerve fiber. So this is what happens in the case of multiple sclerosis. There is slowing down and there of the passage of the nerve impulse, and that is why there is disability. How this condition is diagnosed? There is no definite diagnosis in spite of many diagnostic parameters are available. So clinical diagnosis is very, very important along with the help of modern other diagnostic tools. We can diagnose the case of multiple sclerosis. Clinical diagnosis, early multiple sclerosis may present itself as a history of vague symptoms, and in such condition, the patient may receive symptomatic treatments from many of the general practitioners, and later on, as the disease progresses, he or she is diagnosed as a case of multiple sclerosis. So this may happen. So whenever we find patients with some vague symptoms related to the central nervous system, then we should be vigilant to see whether the case can be a probable case of multiple sclerosis or not. And if necessary, we should investigate in that direction and rule out the multiple sclerosis. Early diagnosis is important as far as the treatment part is concerned. Now, what could be the symptoms if the patient of multiple sclerosis comes to us? What we should look for? The patient may complain of visual disturbances like blurring of vision, diplopia, or optic neuritis. There is involuntary and rapid eye movement, and rarely, but there can be a case of total loss of eyesight. Then there can be disturbance with the balance and coordination. There can be loss of balance. There can be tremors. There can be instability while walking, that is ataxia. There can be giddiness or vertigo. There can be clumsiness of a limb or lack of coordination. There can be weakness, and this can particularly affect the legs and walking. There is altered muscle tone that can lead to muscle stiffness and can affect the mobility. There are episodes of spasm that the patient tells to us. There is altered sensation like tingling or pins and needles. There is paresthesia, that is numbness. There is burning sensation. There may be pain. For example, there may be pain like trigeminal neuralgia, facial pain, or there can be muscular pain. There can be abnormal speech or slowing of speech, slurring of speech. Then words change in the rhythm of speech. There is change in the rhythm of speech. There is difficulty in swallowing, that is dysphagia. The patient suffers from fatigue. And it is the most common symptom. In bladder and bowel, the bladder and bowel may get involved, and there can be constipation. There can be infrequency and loss of bowel control or bladder control. There is impotence. There is loss of sensation as well as intimacy and sexuality is concerned. There is sensitivity to heat. This is a very common symptom and causes a transient worsening of the symptoms. In cognitive and emotional area, there is short-term memory loss. There is loss of concentration, judgment, or reasoning. This type of cognitive and emotional involvement or disturbances are also seen in this type of patient. Now, as far as investigations are concerned, MRI is considered to be a diagnostic tool. McDonald's criteria for diagnosis of multiple sclerosis are considered as important for diagnosis of MS. Now, how MRI is performed? There should be two readings of MRI, and in both the readings, we should be able to see the areas or the demyelinating lesions in the central nervous system, and these two MRIs must be done at least 1 month apart. If we have these two MRI findings, which are suggestive of multiple sclerosis and that can exhibit the lesions in the in the central nervous system, demyelinating lesions, then it is considered as a diagnostic for multiple sclerosis. Now, often these type of lesions of multiple sclerosis can be misunderstood with the vascular uh, accidents or cerebrovascular accidents. So for that purpose, we should know which are the areas where we can get the multiple sclerosis lesions. There is high probability of getting multiple sclerosis lesion, and which are the areas where there is high probability of having a vascular lesion, so that we don't jumble between the two, or we do not have doubt in between the two. So as far as corpus callosum is concerned, if there is any white patch in the corpus callosum area, then it is more common in multiple sclerosis, as well as in U fibers, as well as in cortical lesions. The, there will be common for vascular infarction, but in multiple sclerosis, in cortical lesions are sometimes found. In basal nuclei, if we find any lesions, they are more typical for vascular accidents than multiple sclerosis. In infratentorial area, it is typical for multiple sclerosis if we have any lesion in the infratentorial area. In temporal lobe, we can find early involvement as far as multiple sclerosis is concerned, whereas it is uncommon for vascular accidents. In periventricular and spinal cord, if we see the lesions, then those are very typical for multiple sclerosis. Then Dawson fingers are typically seen in multiple sclerosis. This is also a finding in MRI. The distribution in vascular accident, generally there is asymmetric distribution, but whereas in multiple sclerosis, in general, the distribution is symmetrical or it is diffuse. There is enhancement seen in the lesions in the cases of multiple sclerosis, whereas these are not seen in the vascular accidents. So this is how these are some of the tips according to the distribution of the lesions, so that we do not confuse between the vascular accidents and the multiple sclerosis. These are the demyelinating lesions typically seen in the cases of multiple sclerosis patients MRI. Now, if we perform the CSF examination, we will find that there is increased level of T lymphocytes in CSF. There is increased level of IFN gamma, increased levels of IgG and oligoclonal bands. The TNF is increased, and there are increased activated CD4 plus cells. Now, who are the risk factors? Who will have more risk of having multiple sclerosis, or who will have more chances of having severe forms of multiple sclerosis? Those are male. If the symptoms are seen in older age at the time of onset, if motor and cerebellar signs are present on the onset, short duration between the first and second attack. If it is shorter, then the patient is at high risk. High relapses in early years, or if the remission is not complete, if the symptoms do not go away after the first relapse, if there are chances of early disability, and if there are multiple lesions in the MRI, then such type of patient is considered to have a risk associated with the multiple sclerosis. Now, how it is treated, the modern science, according to modern science, in cases of acute relapses, there is high dose of steroids, methylprednisolone, 1 gram daily for 3 to 7 days is administered. Then there are pulses of IV steroids 3 to 4 times in a year are given to avoid the acute relapses. And for prevention of relapses, immunosuppressive agent like azathioprine are used, or beta interferon is given subcutaneous or intramuscular, that may reduce relapses by 30%. But in long-term disability, this type of treatment is not useful or less useful, then there is one more agent, that is glatiramer acetate, that is used for prevention of relapses. Now, let us see what type of patient we had in our hospital. It is Emipadar Ayurveda Hospital in Mumbai. The patient was 35 years old female, was a housewife. She got admitted on the 28th of August in 2003 and she was discharged on 6th of December 2003. The chief complaints of this patient were Ubhaya Shakha, Adho Shakha Shula and Daurbalya, weakness in and pain in both lower extremities. There was Prushta Shula, that is low back pain. There was Malamutra Vega Samvedana Hani and Malamutra Vega Aniyantran. So there was loss of bowel and bladder control or sensation. There was Sarvanga Daha and Stambha, stiffness and burning sensation in all over body. And there was Gamane Asamarthata, inability to stand, inability to walk, inability to lift the lower limbs. And the symptoms were present in the patient from 1.5, that 1.5 years. According to Ayurveda, if we perform the Ashtavida Parikshan, the Nadi was normal, 80 per minute. Malamutra were uncontrolled and there was no sensation of Malamutra Tyaga. Jivha was Nirama, Shabda Sparsha Druk were Avishesha, and Akruti of the patient was Krusha. If we go across the Srotas wise Parikshan, there was Dushti of Mausavaha Srotas, Majjavaha Srotas, Purishavaha Srotas, and Mutravaha Srotas, whereas other Srotas were relatively normal. On examination, we find that the patient was conscious and patient, as far as other parameters are concerned, the BP, pulse, respiratory system, CVS were clinically abnormal, not abnormal. The CNS patient was oriented. She was responding to vocal commands. There was no neck rigidity, and pupils were also normal. Her abdomen was soft. Further investigation of the central nervous system revealed that the muscle power in both lower extremities was 0/5, whereas in both upper extremities it was normal, that is 5/5. Reflexes, both plantars were extensor, that is dorsiflexion, and both ankle and knees were exaggerated, indicating that there was involvement of the central nervous system, that is upper motor neuron. The basic investigations revealed that the hemoglobin, RBC, WBC were normal. ESR was raised, that is 37 millimeter at the end of 1 hour. The differential count was also normal. Blood sugar, fasting at postprandial were within normal limits. The liver function test, serum protein levels were within normal limits. The renal function test was also within normal limits. But the only problem was the urine infection. Pus cells showed 10 to 12 per HPF, and there were 2 to 4 red blood cells in the per HPF in the urine examination. This urine infection could have been there probably because of the loss of bladder control. The MRI of brain that was done in the August 2003 revealed small periventricular focus of demyelination in the right corona radiata, and this was the only MRI available with the patient. Another MRI, if at all there was done, that was not available with the patient, and on the basis of this MRI she was diagnosed as a case of multiple sclerosis. If we go to the Nidan Panchaka according to Ayurveda, the dosha involvement was Vata, undoubtedly. There was involvement of Rakta, Mausa and Majja as Dusha Dhatus. There was involvement of Rakta, Mausa, Majja, Purisha, Mutra, Srotasa. The Adhisthana was Adho Sharira. There was involvement of Marma, that is Guda and Basti. And there was involvement of Payu, Upastha and Ubhaya Pada Indriya. If we consider the Roga Marga, it was definitely a Vyadhi of Madhyama Marga due to involvement of Marma and Indriya. Now, what should be the Ayurvedic diagnosis of this particular condition? Because there is no condition considered or explained in Ayurveda as multiple sclerosis. And whenever there is such a case that is present before us, we have been given the option that we should know the dosha that is involved. We should know the doshas which are involved, and we should know where they have taken the shelter. That is what is being told by Charaka in Sutrasthan 18th Adhyay. स एव कुपितो दोषः समुत्थान विशेषतः स्थानान्तरगतश्चैव जनयति आमयान् बहुन् तस्मात् विकार प्रकृतिम् अधिष्ठानान्तराणि च समुत्थान विशेषांश्च बुद्ध्वा कर्म समाचरेत्. So it was definitely a Vata Vyadhi, and the Samprapti of Vata Vyadhi, as explained by Charaka, is Dehe Srotaansa Riktani Purayitva Anilo Bali Karoti Vividhan Vyadhin Sarvanga Ekanga Samshritan. Here, the word Rikta means Tuchha or Snehadi Gunashodhya. This particular patient came to the study center or hospital from a very remote place in Maharashtra. She came from a very poor background, and the economical condition of the family was not very good, whereby there was a problem with or there was not good nutrition that was available to the patient. There was no involvement of ghee or any other snigdha padartha, snigdha food in the diet. That is why it can be estimated that due to the undernutrition, if there is no good amount of nutrition available, then the only dose that initiates is Vata. So it was definitely a Vata Vyadhi. And what differential diagnosis we can consider while we come across to the multiple sclerosis? It is Siragata Vata, which has symptoms like Mandaruk, Karsha, and Supti. We can consider Ekanga Roga, that has Sharirardha, Sirasnayu, Shosha, Toda, and Shula. These are the symptoms of Ekanga Roga. Then we can also consider Pangulya, which has symptom of Ubhaypada Kriyahani. But for this particular case, our diagnosis was only Vata Vyadhi. No other particular diagnosis was reached upon. Probably if we see a lot of cases of multiple sclerosis and try to assess the dosha, dusha, hetu, and the pattern of samprapti, we will be able to find what type of Vyadhi we should diagnose it as far as Ayurveda is concerned. Now, if we consider the Chikitsa Sutra for Vata, that it is called as Vata Syopakrama Sneha Svedaha Samshodhanam Mrudu. If we consider the Chikitsa Sutra for Majja Shukragata Vata, then Majja Shukra Samuttanam Bheshajam Swadutiktakam, in view of the undernutrition condition of this patient and involvement of important dhatus such as Majja, Bruhana, and Snehana were the two important Chikitsa Sutra which were followed while treating this particular patient. And for both the purposes, and as the Adhoshakha or Adhasharira of this particular patient were involved in this particular disease, Matra Basti was considered as the treatment of choice. If we consider the importance of Matra Basti, it is considered as Balyam Sukhopacharyam hi Sukham Srushta Purishakrut Sneha Matra Vidhanam hi Bruhanam Vataroganut. We needed both these effects here, Bruhana of the patient and also a pacification of Vata. Here we need to see that though the patient had uncontrolled bowel and uncontrolled bladder, we tried Matra Basti in a different way. We'll discuss that later. What other treatment the patient was given? She was given Yogaraj Guggulu 500 milligrams thrice daily. She was given powders of Shatavari and Ashwagandha 5 grams each twice daily with milk. She was also given Ashwagandha Rishta 30 ml twice daily, and Chandra Prabhavati 500 milligrams thrice daily. To control the urine infection, she was advised to take Norflox 400 milligrams BID for 5 days. Along with that, Rantac 150 milligrams BID for initial 5 days of the treatment. Later on, she received only Ayurvedic treatment. She was also given Panchakarma, Sarvanga, Snehan, and Svedan right after the admission till the end of 10th 9 2003. She was later given Shalishashtik Pindasveda for around 15 days. Matravasti was started and it continued for around 25 days. Then later she was given Bruhatyadi Yapan Basti from 17th November 2003 to 3rd of December. And then afterwards, again Sarvanga Snehan and Svedan was continued to the patient till her discharge. Now, if we go across to the uses of the Shaman Chikitsa that is given, then Yogaraj Gugul contains Swarnamakshik, Lauha, Raupyamakshik, which are considered as Balya for especially the Majja Dhatu. It also contains Guduchi, Punarnava, Trifala, Gugulu, which are Shothagna and Shulagna, as the patient had lot of pain and burning sensation. Yogaraj Gugulu might have worked to reduce the pain. Then there Chandra Prabhavati, it contains Swarnamakshik, Loha and Gugulu and Shilajatu, which are Balya, Rasayana and Vata Shamana. Chandra Prabhavati is also a very good Rasayana medicine as far as the diseases of Adha Sharira are concerned. Then the patient was given Rasna Taila Bastis, and the contents of this Rasnadi Taila are Bala, Ashwagandha, Shatavari, Guduchi, and Rasna. Bala contains Bala is Balya, Ojovardhana, Vatashamana. Ashwagandha is Madhura, Tikta, and Balya for Majja Dhatu. Shatavari is Medhya, Rasayana, and Vatashamana. Guduchi is also Rasayana and Tridoshanut. Rasna is all considered as one of the best Vatahara medicines. So this combination as a whole, if we consider, then it is a Bruhana combination. It is very good in pacifying Vata, and it is also very good to give support to the Majja Dhatu. Bruhatyadi Yapana, it is the reference of Bruhatyadi Yapana is from Charak Siddhisthan 12th chapter, and the contents are Bruhati, Kantakari, Shatavari, Guduchi, Yashti, Madhu. Siddhakshira was given in a 60 ml. Then Panchatikta Ghruta 15 ml was added to it. Madhu 10 ml was added. It was this type particular Bruhatyadi Yapana was planned as per the availability of the medicine, as the patient came from very low economical background. The patient could not afford costlier medicines, and we had to manage from whatever was available in the hospital. If we consider the properties of ingredients of Bruhatyadi Yapana, then Bruhati is Madhura, Tikta and Majjabalya. Kantakari is also Madhura, Tikta and Majjabalya. Shatavari is Rasayana, Vatashamana. Guduchi is also Rasayana. Panchatikta Ghruta is very, very important as far as diseases of Asthi and Majja are concerned. And Madhu, whenever we put it in a basti, it is Yogavahi, and it has also got Sandhanakara property. Now, as far as Vata Vyadhis are concerned, if we consider the Sadhya Sadhyata, then the patient who are having Sandhichuti, Hanustambha, Kunchana, Kubjata, Aradita, Pakshaghata, Anga Samshosha, Pangutva, Khudavatata, these types of diseases and diseases which are in the which involve the Asthi and Majja, they may show remission or may not show remission. And to see a little bit of remission also, we need to do treatment very much intensely. Now, let us consider what results we got in this particular patient. There is one scale called as Krukes Disability Status Scale for multiple sclerosis. Before treatment, the patient was in grade 8, and grade 8 describes as essentially restricted to bed or a chair and retains many self-care function and has effective use of arms. And after treatment, the patient was in grade 6, and grade 6 describes as needs assistance in walking, for example, cane, crutches, or braces. When the patient was admitted in our hospital, she was bedridden. She could not move her limb. The muscle power was 0/5 in both lower limbs. But at the end of the study, when the patient was discharged from the hospital, she could stand or try to walk with the help of a walker. That's why this change in the gradation is seen as far as Krukes Disability Scale is concerned. Now, let us see how the patient got relief. When the patient was admitted, she was having Adhoshakha Daurbalya 5+, Shula 4+, Prusthashula Malamutra Tyag Niyantran Hani, Samvedana Hani. There was Dah, Stambha, and Gamane Asamarthata. After the initial span of 12 to 13 days of only Abhyanga and Svedana, the Adhoshakha Daurbalya was same. Shula was little bit reduced. Prusthashula was same. Malamutra Niyantrana Hani and Samvedana Hani were same. Daha and Daha was same. Stambha was little bit reduced, and Gamane Asamarthata was same. Then after this initial span of 13 days of Abhyanga Svedana and Shamana Aushadhi, she was started with Pindasvaida, and after the initial treatment along with Shalishashtika Pindasvaida, the Adhoshakha Daurbalya reduced a little bit and Adhoshakha Shula reduced a lot. There was 50% around relief in the Adhoshakha Shula, but the Malamutra, Aniyantran and Samvedana Hani were same. Prusthashula was same. Daha was same. Stambha was further reduced. Gamane Asamarthata was same. Then later she was started with Abhyanga Sveda along with Matra Basti. After starting with Matra Basti, as I have already told, that the patient was having loss of control over the bladder and bowel. So how can Basti be given to such patient? In this particular patient, as there was loss of bowel and bladder control, we started with minimal dose of Basti, that is 10 ml. On the first day, the patient received a Basti only of 10 ml of Tasnadi Taila. Later on, and it immediately came out. There was no retention of Basti. The Basti Dharana capacity was not there. Next day, again, we tried with 10 ml. At the end of 3 or 4 days, the patient, though she could not have any sensation or any control on bladder and bowel, the Basti started to retain for some minutes and later to some hours. Then gradually we increased the matra of Rasnadi Taila in Basti from 10 ml to 20 ml, then later on to 30 ml, then 40 ml, and after some period, we could give the Matra Basti of 60 ml to the patient, and it could retain for some hours. So this is how we tried to give the Basti, even though there was loss of bladder and bowel. After starting the Basti, we find out that Adhoshakha Daurbalya was reducing. The Prusthashula was still there, but Adhoshakha Shula was also reducing. Malamutra Tyaga Niyantran Hani and Samvedana Hani was same as before. Sarvanga Daha and Sarvanga Stambha were also similar, and Gamane Asamarthata was also there. Then at the end of Abhyanga Sveda and at the end of the Bruhatyadi Yapana cycle, we found that Adhoshakha Daurbalya was very well reduced. Adhoshakha Shula was very well reduced. Now the patient could stand with the help of walker. The patient could walk at a slow pace with the help of walker. The Prusthashula, Malamutra Tyaga Niyantrana Hani and Samvedana Hani did not improve throughout the course of the treatment. Sarvanga Daha also did not improve throughout the course of treatment. Stambha was reduced to 50%, but still it was persistent. And the patient who could not walk, who could not lift her limb, now she could walk along with the help of walker. Later, the patient was discharged and there was no trace of patient as she again went to her native place in the remote village in Maharashtra. There was no follow-up received from the patient. As far as reflexes and other CNS examinations are considered, on admission, the muscle power gradation in both lower limbs was 0/5, while on the discharge, it improved to 3/5. Muscle power of upper limbs was normal and perfect, and it remained so. As far as reflexes are concerned, both the plantar reflexes were extensor, that is dorsiflexion, and they remained so at the end of the treatment as well. And both the ankle and knee reflexes were exaggerated on admission, but at discharge, the both ankle and knee reflexes were normal. So this is about the case. I hope it will help you in understanding multiple sclerosis and also provide some tips for the treatment of multiple sclerosis if you come across any of the patient. I would like to acknowledge our team which was working in the study center, that is MEPLR Hospital in Worli in Mumbai. Professor Dr. Kuldeep Raj Kohli, who was the dean at that time. Our unit head, Dr. Raman Gungralekar sir, Dr. Shashikant Sakpal sir, who were our teachers in the unit, and our team of resident doctors, Dr. Sarang Patil, Dr. Aarti Chapolikar, myself, and Dr. Vaishali Joshi. Thank you for your patient listening.